Dude, come on. Right.
Good afternoon. Oh, beloveds, it is good to be together. I'm Reverend Dr. Beth Johnson. My pronouns are she, they, and it is an honor to welcome you to the homegoing of Harriett Rogers Goff. It is good to be together. In the Unitarian Universalist tradition, we begin by lighting a chalice. It is the symbol of our faith. Life is a gift for which we are grateful. We gather in community to celebrate the wonder and the mysteries of this great gift. We light our chalice in honor and celebration of the life of Harriett Rogers Goff. Again, I'm going to invite you to just take a breath with me for a moment. As we arrive from the various parts of our day, the various parts of our lives, which include Harriett and our memories of her, and the various parts of ourselves as we just gather together. I welcome you this afternoon for this day as we gather to remember, to mourn, and to celebrate the life of Harriett Rogers Goff. On behalf of her beloved Tony and Peg, Alicia, Rachel, Kyle, and all of the family, I welcome you. And we also hold in our hearts those whose sadness it is that they weren't able to be with us today. Deval Curry, Rachel Cummings, Michael Young, who will be here, will hear his words from Tony, Diana Slaughter-Kotzen, Jim Wansner, Sherry Barthel, Sean Kelly, Lee Lowell, some of the folks who can't be here but who are with us in spirit. And on behalf of the church, family, thank you. Thank you for sharing Harriett with us in this time. We gather here in a place that was special to Harriett, which she loved, which she helped shape, and which helped shape her. And in the Unitarian Universalist faith that formed her, and which supported her for so many years. We're gathered here, beloved, by death from places near and far. And it is death that breaks our hearts wide open with longing, and now we share that in our days. And we know that death comes to us all, our griefs tumble through us, reminding us of the preciousness of life. It comes to us all, and in its coming exacts from us the risk of love, a heart broken for the loss of a grandmother's guidance, a mother's presence, a friend's steadfast companionship, reminding us of the power of love. For inasmuch as death gathers us here, and has broken our hearts and shaped our recent days, death does not have the last word here. Love does. Make no mistake about that, beloved. Love has the word here. For love is stronger than death. And for all that Harriett was and still is to us and remains for each of us in that unique way, it is love that defined her and love that shaped us, her love. Now, I have to confess, and I've said to a couple of people this afternoon already, I feel cheated that I only knew Harriett for 3 years. I mean, it's just not right. That's because I've only been here 3 years. Some of you have had her for longer periods of time, some much longer. In family, you had her forever. What a gift Harriett was and is. I loved her. And I'm telling you this because Harriett told me that it's important to let the people you love, know how you feel about them. We shared that value. So I'd tell her I loved her, and she'd smile and say, "Thank you, dear." Right? You can hear it, can't you? Harriett told me that she was, and I still say is, the human being she was because of the unconditional love of her father. She embodied that love and that humanity throughout her life of teaching, of developing and sustaining friendships here and across the country, developing her work for justice. Harriett was a lifelong Unitarian Universalist, and she lived our values in all that she did. And this chair isn't here every Sunday, although it is nice, isn't it? This is a church from First Unitarian Chicago in Hyde Park, where Harriett attended, where her family's ashes are interred, and where we will bring her ashes as well. So I told Harriett, she took this from First Unitarian, and they were gonna like get rid of it. So Harriett took it and had it restored, and it was in her house. And then when they were clearing out her house, she asked if we wanted it, and I said yes, of course. And then it occurred to me that maybe First Unitarian in its new iteration would like it back, so I asked their minister, and he said yes, and now I'm not giving it back. Sorry. Not sorry. Because I get to look at this. What does that speak to you? Dignity. Dignity. And that's what Harriett embodied. Dignity, honesty, wisdom, truth, love, compassion, brilliance, depth. Getting to know Harriett enriched my life, and I know it has enriched all of yours because here you are, sitting at the feet of a proud Black woman whose life was one of adventure and learning and hardship and victory, embodying that grace, embodying that wisdom and dignity. It was a gift. Sitting at her bedside during the time of transition was humbling. It wasn't always serious. It was usually deep. We talked about theology. She was what I call interspiritual, mentioning Jephus and the other great traditions. Her love of music, relationships, justice, and her wishes for this service. This service is what Harriett wanted it to be. From the structure to the readings, this is her. Harriett wasn't afraid to die. She said she lived a good life, a rich life, a full life, and that she was ready, and that she didn't need it to rush. She cherished the life that she had with you, y'all. Family and friends. I believe that the spirit doesn't die, but the spirit of Harriett lives in each and every one of us. When we recall her face, her smile, Harriett had a sly smile. Am I right? Yeah, she had a sly smile. And you know that there was a lot going on there. I remember one time when we have a wise elders group that Harriett attended for a long time. And they had a gathering, and we sat and talked about her history with Unitarianism and Unitarian Universalism and the way that she made meaning out of life. Harriett's commitment to her family, to justice, to compassion, to beauty, to friendship, to integrity. These live and breathe in the legacy that she has left. And in each and every one of us, if we were to but pick up the mantle of that legacy, to live with dignity, to live with kindness, to live with truth-telling and truthful living. We here, my friends, are the inheritors of her wisdom, her beauty, and her goodness. For as much as we grieve and we mourn, exactly, we celebrate life. This is a homegoing and a celebration of life. And it is good to be together. I'm going to invite Jamie up for a few words. You got to move this chair, huh, Jamie?
I have this all the time. I like that too.
Okay.
I'm looking over here because that's where Harriett always was, in that back corner. I came here in 2016, and at first I think I was her favorite person, but for what I played, but soon she became my favorite person. She was amazingly sharp, and witty, and that sly smile, absolutely. After a time, I would play a piece of music here, and I often improvise and do many different things, and the first thing I would do would be to look back there and check her face and make sure what I did was okay. She was my filter. So I'm going to play some Bach for you and some Cole Porter for you because that's what she would have liked, so thank you.
For those of you who don't know, Jamie is our music director, Jamie Passman. This is a reading chosen by Harriett, Mother to Son, by Langston Hughes. Well, son, I'll tell you, life for me been no crystal stair. It had tacks in it, and splinters, and boards torn up, and places with no carpet on the floor, bare. But all the time, I've been climbing on and reaching landings and turning corners and sometimes going in the dark where there ain't been no light. So boy, don't you turn back. Don't you set down on the steps, because you know it finds it hard, kind. Don't you fall now, for I still see you going, honey. I still see you climbing. And life for me ain't been no crystal stair. Okay, Tony and Alicia, I invite you up for the life story.
I'm Tony Metters, and this is my sister Alicia. I'm going to share with you some of Harriett's family history because it's important. Harriett was the only child of William Burdett Rogers and Edna Josephine Timoney. I was very fortunate to spend time with Mom on her family history, and I'm pleased to share it with you. Her father, Raj, as she called him, was born February 22nd, 1892, in Columbus, Mississippi. He didn't know his father, only that he was some white man. Raj moved from Mississippi to Macon, Georgia at 14. The details on why aren't fully known, but Mom said he left Mississippi and never wanted to return. He was employed by Mr. Wirtz at the railroad office, who taught him how to type. In 1918, Raj served in World War I. Corporal Rogers was the company clerk for the 809th Pioneer Infantry, a regiment of colored soldiers and white officers. They were based in France, but didn't see action. If they had, his job would have been to collect the dog tags of the dead and type up the names. After the war, he relocated to Southern Illinois. Edna, Harriet's mother, her birthday was also February 22nd, same date except 1893, 1 year later. Fun fact, Raj and Edna were both born on the same birthday as George Washington. Some of us are old enough to remember that used to be a holiday, a day off from school, right? Yeah. Edna was born in Moberly, Missouri, one of 9 children of the former slave David Timoney. Edna ultimately attended the Lincoln Institute in Jefferson City, Missouri, one of the country's oldest HBCUs, known today as Lincoln University of Missouri. They were one of the few that had a teaching program for African American women. Edna became a teacher and relocated to Southern Illinois. From talking to Harriett, I don't recall how they met, but in 1921, Raj and Edna were married. I think Mom told me they were married on Valentine's Day, February 14th. At that time, married women were not allowed to teach, so they left southern Illinois and moved to Omaha. There, Raj found a job as a Pullman porter, but Harriett said the runs were not good. They learned that Chicago had more opportunity for blacks, so they moved there in the early 20s, settling in the Inglewood neighborhood. Raj passed the civil service entrance exam and became a postal clerk, a job he held until his death. It was a good job which supported the family during the Great Depression. Edna tried to teach again, but Chicago didn't recognize her Missouri credentials. This angered her, and she declined to recertify. Kind of reminds me of Harriett a little. Okay, you don't like my credentials? And Harriett was born on April 5th, 1929, roughly 6 months before the Wall Street crash and the start of the Great Depression. Harriett told me that Raj was very kind and he loved her unconditionally. His nickname for her was Dolly. He was a smoker, and Mom used to hand roll his cigarettes for him. Raj also made his own beer, and she helped him. One of her tasks was to start the siphon. This was her favorite part. She told me that his beer was very good. Harriett told me that Edna was strict. She had high standards and stressed the importance of education. Her goal was for Harriett to be able to support herself with or without a spouse. Edna might have been stubborn. We asked my fraternal grandmother, Rachel, about this. Her 3-word response, spoken with her distinctive Tennessee accent, was, "like a mule." I told Harriet about this later, and she never disputed the point that Edna was stubborn. Raj died in 1952 before I was born, and Edna died in 1963 when I was just 3, on February 12th, Lincoln's birthday, which was also, used to be a day off from school for some of us. Although I have no physical memories of my grandparents, I feel as if I knew them, thanks to Harriet's stories, told so well. It's part of my family history and part of African American history. Our family lived in Hyde Park in the 1960s and 70s. In 1980, Harriet left Chicago after her marriage to Dr. Mark Goff, an orthopedic surgeon. And for the next 35 years, they lived happily in Nebraska, Missouri, and Kansas, where Mark practiced medicine. And you can imagine Harriet worked her way into the fabric of every one of those communities and made many friends and acquaintances. And after Mark's passing, she returned to Illinois in 2015, settling in Elmhurst. I'm going to give you some stories and facts in no particular order. Mom was a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority, which is the oldest Greek letter organization established by African American college-educated women. She was especially proud of fellow AKA member, former Vice President Kamala Harris. Harriet's favorite cocktail was the gin martini. Those will be available later. Her favorite beer was Guinness Stout. She loved books for her entire life and very much enjoyed her Elmhurst book club meetings. Harriet loved the news and discussing current events. I found it amazing that she was always up to speed on everything, and she devoured a variety of newspapers and magazines from which she selected content to share with others. Harriet excelled in education. She completed high school early, completed her undergraduate studies at Chicago's Teachers College, now called Chicago State University. There were two. The other Chicago's Teachers College became Northern Illinois University. She completed her master's and started on a PhD, both of those in human development, at the University of Chicago. She taught in the Chicago Public Schools for 28 years. She loved her students, whom she affectionately called the dear friends. Mom's circle of friends, her club, as she would say, had an important influence on me. These strong black women were part of the village that raised me and us. Right. Since childhood and through adulthood, and they were our aunties. I want to recognize Peggy Jackson, who couldn't be here today, so hopefully she's catching the stream. Aunt Peggy. Harriet was raised in the Christian Science faith, but became a Unitarian after her friend Pauline McCoo, Aunt Polly, met some nice Unitarians in Hyde Park in the 1960s. She joined the First Unitarian Church of Chicago and remained a Unitarian ever since. And she dearly loved our Unitarian Church of Hinsdale. My favorite Harriet exclamation was, "Lord have mercy, Jeepus." This originated at Unitarian Sunday School in Hyde Park, where there was a boy who had pronunciation issues with Jesus. She tried to correct him, but Jeepus was the best he could manage, so in the end, "Lord have mercy, Jeepus," became one of her expressions, and now I too say that. Many of us talk about Jeepus. The Unitarian faith draws inspiration from all the world's religions, and Harriet sometimes consulted her multi-denominational connections on my behalf, and Alicia's. If she sensed that we had something that might be troubling us, on many occasions she'd say, "Tony, Alicia, don't worry, I'll speak with Muhammad, Buddha, and Mrs. Eddy about that." And occasionally I had to remind her, "Don't forget Jeepus." "Oh yes, Jeepus too," she would answer. What I admire most about Harriet was her ability to make deep personal connections with nearly everyone she met, and that she valued and cultivated those relationships. It's something that I try to do in my life, and I thank her for that example. Our mother-son relationship was very special to me, and I think about her every day with love, gratitude, and appreciation.
My second pair of eyes on here. Aloha avakea, good afternoon, and mahalo nui loa, thank you very much for joining us to celebrate Harriet's life. As I have just marked the 39th anniversary of moving to Hawaii Island, also known as the Big Island, I should tell you that the vibe of my adopted home is pretty laid back. So please bear with me as I progress with my less formal remarks. Growing up, we attended many different types of performing arts events like Kabuki Theater, the Goodman Theater, Bolshoi Ballet, classical, and multicultural music events. Mom encouraged our interests and passions. We were able to take piano lessons, classes at the Art Institute of Chicago, and art classes in Hyde Park. Clearly, Tony's passion was and is music. He played and took lessons in piano, violin, recorder, and, believe it or not, bassoon. Mine was dance, starting with modern dance in Hyde Park at Lenhoff's. I went on to ballet and jazz. Mom, who would not believe she could do this, she even found a ballet camp in Dorset, Vermont, where I went for 2 summers between my 4th grade and 5th grade school years. How very lucky we were that Mom and Dad made all of these things possible. The unique inner workings of Harriet's inner mind are evident in our unusual nicknames growing up. As children, Tony was Figgy Dugas, Fig, or Figgy, while I was Gamoogali, Gamumu, or simply Moo. The origins of these names are unknown to me. Maybe baby noises that emanated from our mouths. Who knows? And Tony kind of backed me up on that. Apparently, we made odd noises as babies. Oh, I thought Rachel would precede me. So, continuing with nicknames, Kyle was KKWC. Rachel was Rockala, and Mark, DMG, which could have meant Dr. Mark Goff, but was in fact short for Dear Mark Goff. Tony mentioned some of the turns of phrase that Harriett often used. People being their own dear selves, and and Lord have mercy, Jifas. I recalled one that Mom used and all of us could have a need to appropriate in the future. Mom's Chicago manicurist, when we were growing up, Doris, gave us blessum and dismissum for acquaintances that could be problematic or trifling at times. Thank you, Doris. It's so true. Mom had to remind me of this phrase several times about 4 years ago when I endured a school year, 10 months, with a particularly unprofessional new colleague, like the worst professional year of my life. She patiently listened to me vent ad nauseum about that year. She'd say, about that fellow for one school year. And eventually she'd just say, bless him and dismiss him. Because I think she was kind of tired of hearing me complain about this person. As you almost know, Harriett was a great listener with her vast bank of knowledge and the desire and ability to interact with others meaningfully. Once she knew someone's interests or passions, she shared personal anecdotes, clippings, books, magazine subscriptions, tchotchkes, whatever she had or came across that pertained to one's preferred oeuvre. In closing, I am so fortunate and appreciative that I had 96 years with such a stellar mom. To this day, I tell people that I'm glad she still claimed me as her own after my teenage years. Finally, just like her father before her, Harriet loved me unconditionally through many ups and downs, and for that I'm forever grateful.
Pieces of a life, right? We all have different pieces. I have like a short piece, they have a long piece, and others that we're going to hear from have more pieces. So I'm going to invite up Rachel and Kyle.
Thanks, Bud. There is so much to say about my Grandma Harriet. It's hard to know where to start, and she did not leave me an easy task. But when I was thinking about this, I reminded myself, I know whatever I ended up with, she would have told me how much she loved it, and she would have asked me to print out several copies of my remarks so she could put them in the mail for her friends who couldn't make it. And speaking of that, what you need to know about my grandma is this. During her life, she was the backbone of the United States Postal Service. Like, actually, I promise. She lived a full and connected life across many geographies. And wherever she was, she stayed up to speed with what her people were up to, no matter how far away they were or she was, which is a labor of love. Our whole childhood, she lived in Kansas while we were here in Illinois. So the snail mail was a whole love language. She gifted us magazine subscriptions, sent letters, but most often sent envelopes with clippings from her morning of readings of newspapers and magazines that she had taken a pair of scissors to. She was always reading, and if she thought we might find what she came across interesting, out came the scissors. She sent books that curated our childhood library, piles and piles of bedtime stories, including numerous collections of Swahili folk stories, because she was always reminding us of who we were and where our people came from. Oh, and she sent the best Christmas boxes. The Christmas cookies for us and my mom's entire family is a story for another time. But she sent our Christmas gifts in boxes filled with perfectly wrapped packages and bows and labels for each person. Peg and Tony, Rachel, or sometimes Rachel Jean. And for Kyle, KKWC, which I think my aunt told you all, stands for Kyle Wonder Child. Or maybe she didn't. So no question as who the favorite grandchild is. But it's a very accurate label for how she saw Kyle, how she saw me, how she saw her children. She was just in awe and enamored with all of her people. Grandma Harriet was a woman who knew exactly who she was, converting to Unitarian Universalism, citing her refusal to be a hypocrite in the Christian Science Church, because she knew she wasn't going to give up doctors or drinking. She was a proud Black woman. One of my favorite stories she shared was that through her friends Lee and Brad, she had met an African exchange student at Concordia University who was studying in the States. And due to Harriet's fair appearance, the student couldn't believe that she was Black. Grandma let her new friend know that they should address her as her Blackness going forward. Anyone will tell you Harriet was smart as a whip. she did her PhD coursework short of a dissertation because she married Mark and they were moving, and in her words, "Honey, I knew I didn't need a PhD in Nebraska." She didn't need a piece of paper or an institution to validate her because she had her education, and she carried that with her everywhere. She instilled in her children and her grandchildren the importance of the life of the mind. In her last months, folks from home would call to apprise me of Grandma's many visitors because I was out in Boston. And they would say, "Everyone loves Harriet." And sometimes I'd say back, "And Harriet loves you all too." Not everyone, but all of you. Because she shared her love with countless people, but she's an astute judge of character and had a discerning mind. We'd have conversations about a certain person who was a thorn in both of our sides, who she simply would refer to as that man with one of those looks. Or I'd be discussing someone's annoying idiosyncrasies, and she'd say quite diplomatically and graciously, "Well, Rachel, they're their own dear self, aren't they?" She was quiet about her judgment, but unreserved with displays of adoration. She would sit rapt at attention in every conversation she had, whether it was with another adult or with a child. I miss calling her on the phone and getting greeted with, "Hi, Peg," because she thought my mom was calling her on some business matter. And when I replied, like, "No, Grandma, it's Rachel," hearing the complete joy in her voice, she would say, oh, Rachel, oh, hi, dear heart, it's so lovely to hear your voice." It was a call for pleasure, not business, just to connect, and that joy in her voice signaled pure love. I miss the way that she sipped her coffee slowly throughout the day, and how she nursed a Guinness over an entire evening. I miss her pointed looks from across the room, exchanging words with just a glance. I miss the envelopes of clippings with the simple note, "I thought you might enjoy this." And I'm grateful for the books that I have from her that still have a label on the inside front cover with my name on them, for the handwritten recipe of her famous black walnut cookies with specific brands, packaging instructions, all written in her perfect Chicago teacher handwriting. I'm grateful for being a Black, witchy Unitarian with a love for books and social justice and coffee and a habit of staying up too late. Harriet knew exactly who she was, and with that same discernment, she knew exactly who I was, and she loved me so much. And so because of that, it felt special to be seen and loved by her. And as I move through these days without her, I'm reminded of the circle she grew over a lifetime, her orbit. I consider it an honor to have been part of that, and I'm so glad that her people are now my people too. And I'm thankful for this generous gift that she's left behind for all of us of each other. Thank you.
Apples don't fall far from the tree, as they say, in terms of light and being articulate and brilliant, and you hear that from the family. And we're gonna hear from more family. So, Mary Jean, you wanna come on up?
Harriet was a woman of letters. She wrote many of them in her lifetime in that distinctive, beautiful penmanship of hers. These usually had a relevant article clipped and enclosed, and she received many letters in return. When cleaning out her things, we came across them. Boxes and boxes, too many to count. They came from former students, cousins, grandchildren, her own, as well as the kids she adopted along the way. Church members, past and present, neighbors from different places she lived, and others known only to her. It's wonderful that she kept so many of them from various stages of her life. They provide a written history of her life and times. In the spirit of letter writing, I like to think of today as a love letter to Harriett that comes from all of our hearts. And from me personally, I offer this final letter to Harriett. Dear Harriett, you were a woman of your times who lived a beautiful, rich life. I learned so many things from you over the years, and even right up to the end, when you often said to me and others, "Ask me anything." And boy, did we. I remember asking how you formed such bonds with so many people and from so many different ages. You said, you need to ask and listen. A lot of people ask, but they don't wait to listen. Think of the simple wisdom in that alone. I asked how you dealt with so many difficult people, and we've heard this. She said you blessed them and dismissed them. I think you got that from your hairdresser, but you definitely made it your own. Over the years, I remember talking to you about the challenges of raising a daughter, especially during the rough teen years. You acknowledged how tough that time can be, but offered me hope through the example of your adult relationship with Alicia. I've seen how dutiful and loving she was to you, and I knew my time would come, and I wasn't wrong. We would have been lost without our daughters. My sister, also an educator, asked how you dealt with an unruly student. Your response? I made that student the leader, and that responsibility took care of it. Think of it, no time out in the hall, no trip to the principal's office. Brilliant. You also said, when all else fails, raise a single finger and say, "Don't make me act the fool." I think that worked on Tony and Alicia, too. But I'm left to wonder exactly what that version would look like from Harriett. And speaking of students, here's an excerpt from a letter that you received in 2017 from a student you had in your 4th grade class, some 45 years later. Dear Mrs. Metters, in 1963, I was in your 4th grade class. That year was the best school year of my life because I adored you as a teacher. I have so many fond memories of you. When I was naughty, perhaps talking, you would give me a stern look and whisper on my ear to stay focused, stop talking. You were so great at not humiliating students. I wasn't the top student in the class, but you made a deep impression on my love of school that year. I am currently a 5th grade teacher in California, and I often cite you as having been my favorite teacher. For your 90th birthday, we had a really fun party, and Jim Wanzer flew in from Kansas to be your mystery date. I will never forget that day. We asked the guests to write you a birthday card or note that you could take home and enjoy later in the quiet of your apartment. Of course, you saved those love letters, and I had the opportunity to read some of them. Here's where the waterworks started for me. You were genuinely loved, and you made such an impact on so many people. I'm so happy that you got to read those letters. Here are 2 excerpts. Harriett, I want you to know how much I look up to you and admire you. I feel so lucky to have role models like you and my other grandmas to remind me how I want to be, and how to treat others. I love you so much. And this, Harriett, there are many people I love and very few people I admire, and you are both. Your sharp wit, deep intelligence, and endless grace are an example to us all, and I aspire to be more like you. This past week, we had a great time at book club recounting how you always came so prepared. When you offered your take on something in the book, it was always so insightful. We miss that so much. But when the book discussion died down this time, we talked about other things. In this case, our mothers, since that was the part of the book that we had read. Wheezy, our esteemed co-president of the book club, reminded the group of how your mother once said to you, Harriett, you don't need to go to a therapist. I can tell what's wrong with you for free. Ain't that a mother? My goodness, what a laugh we had. Believe me, Harriett, this letter could go on, but there's an open bar waiting downstairs, and I need to close. Please know that I will never forget you. I loved you so much, and the impact you had on so many others will live forever. I'm grateful every day that Peggy and Tony brought you to Elmer's 10 years ago and into their home at the end. This end-of-life accommodation allowed us all to visit frequently and comfortably. I also feel such comfort knowing that your voices were the first voices they heard in the morning and the last that you heard at night. What a gift. Thank you.
Julie, Mallory, would you like to come up?
It's been so light, and I said I wasn't gonna cry. Good afternoon. First, I want to point to the sign over here. Harriet's birthday says 4/29/1929. My mother was born April 29th. 1928, and they were lifelong best friends. I met Harriet at my birth. Harriet Rogers was her name then, and her full name is Harriett Rogers Meadows Goff. Know all of them. She was my godmother. My mother, Margaret Robinson Cox, were lifelong friends, meeting each other before entering kindergarten. They went from kindergarten all the way to Chicago Teachers College. They attended James McCosh in Woodlawn, Inglewood area. Harriet told me some of the happiest moments of her life were spending the night with the Robinsons, which are my grandparents, to come home late at night after working at the post office. You see, he would give them syrup, maple syrup, butter, hot biscuits, around 12 o'clock at night, because he's just getting home from the post office. See, Harriet being the only child, she felt like she was part of the Robinson family. She went everywhere with them, spent the night whenever, school night. She was always there. And that syrup, they named it soft syrup. He also had ice cream some days, and those days they made their ice cream. It was homemade. And they would sit at the kitchen table and talk about their day. Their friendship never faltered through their adulthood, through their marriages, through the birth of their children, through life challenges, rewards. They were always there for each other. As adults, they would not see or talk to each other every day as they did while growing up. Life circumstances put them in different geographical locations. However, when they did talk, they would talk. They would talk and stay on the phone for hours. It didn't matter if they were apart. In those days, when we were younger, you had to pay per minute for long distance calls. So, when she visited me, my phone bill would go, shoo. And I'm sure Tony's did too. We lived my stepfather was a Tuskegee Airman, and Goff and him had a lot to talk about, 'cause their experiences and everything. And Mark at that time was still a medic in the Army, and Army Air Force, National Guard. And he and my father would have long talks too. So when they would come to Chicago, they would spend their time at Tony and Peg's, and then they would spend some more time at my house. So wherever you went, if they were both in town together, all four of them, you know, it just went on nights and nights, and you would just go to bed. Harriet would know your interests. One of my fondest memories was when they lived on 53rd and Greenwood in Hyde Park. And I was, you know, teenager, preteen, and I would come over and I would play hide and seek with Tony. I would have tea time with Alicia because Harriet believed in tea time. We learned tea time very early. At 3 o'clock, we would sit down and have tea and our cookies and biscuits. And as Harriet is a teacher at McCosh School, used to invite her students over to her mother's house, Edna, to have tea and cookies during their lunch break. Harriet was a great communicator. She could tell you the most intriguing stories, memories that were so vivid you could imagine yourself being there. You could talk to her about anything. She was non-judgmental, a confidant, an advisor, a mentor, a friend, and she was my sister of Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority, which focuses on education, humanity, and community. Harriet would know your interests, and the educator she was, if she saw a newspaper or a magazine article, she would cut it out and send it to you. If there was a book she thought you would like or you need to read, she made sure you got it. She was always informed and interested in my studies. And I'm sure with everybody's studies, especially Tony and Elisa. When I moved back to Chicago, she was instrumental in me getting my first job with the Chicago Public Schools. As I said, she was my mentor. When my mother died in 1996, she stepped up, being a grandmama Harriet. That's what the twins would call her. My son is here, one of them, the other one working. And Harriet would say, no, you go to work. Yeah. So they called her Great-Grandma Harriet, because Harriet took the role of my mother. She didn't replace her because she was always in my life, so I never knew the difference, you know, go to whoever. Grandma Harriet was the safest, because she would always say, I understand. Yes, to a little baby that can't talk. So she would do that to Nicholas and Ryan. She said, is your mother treating you right? You know, is your mother doing right? Okay. And then she loved their ferret, their dogs, and she would take pictures of them and send them back to them whenever she came to Chicago. Whenever she came to Chicago, she split her time between my house and Peggy's and Tony's house. She would go back and forth. She would say, oh, I'm going to stay with Julie for 3 days. I'm going back to Peg's and Tony's. This is when she still lived out of town. When she moved back here, she moved closer to Tony and Peg. And she said that was the best decision in her life because Tony, being the young man he became, because I'm older than him, and Peggy, she loved Peggy like a daughter. She said she is the sweetest thing, and her parents and family, she said she couldn't have located anywhere better. I was trying to get her to come to Chicago to move closer to me, but she said, nah, I'm going to Tony's. Of course, Rachel and Kyle, she always talked about your activities. That's why I'm saying she could talk for hours, because their activities were full, always. And she treated my sons, Kyle, Rachel, as her grandchildren, no difference. And she always had me, not only her, my mother too, had three of us, the four of us, my brother, always together having fun, you know, no matter what the age difference was. So she would tell me where Tony's band was playing. She loved coming to his concerts. She loved his friends, his band members. She would tell me about each and every one of you. If you met Harriet, she could tell each and every one of you about who you are. She could say she's that personable, you know, and concerned, and she listens. She never missed a birthday. She never missed a holiday. And she was proud of all the accomplishment her children made. Harriet, your book club. When she got sick, that's the only thing she wanted to keep up. She made it to that book club. She read that book. If she would tell me what book they're reading, if she didn't come to your book club, she and I would get on the phone for hours, and Tony could tell you. Because one time I called her and I couldn't get her, and I panicked. Called Peg, upset her, called Tony, hey, where's Harriet? So, but Harriet, you are missed. You are the symbol of love. You had a gentle and kind spirit that will always be here within. May you rest in heaven. You were perfect, perfect.
I'm going to invite up Kenneth Dawson.
We are representing Tony's OG group that grew up together in Hyde Park. The timeless African proverb, "It takes a village to raise a child," was popularized worldwide in 1996 by Hillary Clinton's book, reminding us that parenting was never a solitary journey. 25 years prior to that, in the early 1970s, in neighborhoods all over the south side of Chicago, families were working together to create nurturing environments for their children. In the south side neighborhood of Hyde Park, where we came from and where we grew up, Tony, Buzz, James Hall, James Young, and I were blessed with the love and support of our life journey of childhood and adolescence. As one of the mothers, one of the matriarchs who had the biggest impact on our lives, Harriet was our angel on earth. Not only was Harriet a mother that provided us with love, support, guidance, Harriet was a 4th grade teacher, as you heard, at Shoe Smith School, right there in Hyde Park. And guess what? Harriet was the fourth grade teacher of both Buzz and James Hall. Priceless. As we were growing up, we would often stop by Tony's house on the way to the park to play football, baseball, basketball, and Harriet would always make sure that we were dressed right and that we were well hydrated before we headed off to the park. And as we left her house, she would say, "Make sure you are home before the streetlights come on. Don't make me have to call your mother." When we got to high school and got our first jobs, when we would get off work in the evening, we wanted to hang out and have fun, as most teenagers do. And Harriet welcomed us into their home with her kindness, love, and support. So Tony's house became the hangout house for us on the corner of 53rd and Greenwood, 5244 South Greenwood. Tony's bedroom is where we would hang out on the second floor with a big picture window overlooking the street. We spent many late evenings there listening to music and enjoying Tony playing his bass guitar. We would be jamming. Little did we know that years later, Tony would grow up to be a world-class musician, be part of a fantastic band, which is well represented here today, and would have CDs out and go on tours around the country. Anyway, back to our hangout house. What I realize now is that Harriet, our angel on earth, was providing us teenagers with a safe zone, a place we could go full of love and support and just be teenagers. We did not have to hang out on the streets or hang out in our cars. We had Harriet's house. You see, it truly does take a village to raise a child. Today, we are all successful adults with families of our own. Harriet was there every step of the way. She loved our children. She loved our wives. Our wives, I know my wife, Donna, was like a best friend of Harriet's. And from the day Donna came into my life 45 years ago, I was on the back burner when Harriet was there. It was Donna and Harriet, and sometimes it'd be like, Tony, will you tell your mom I'm here too? But as we live our lives with an attitude of gratitude for being blessed with kindness, unconditional love, and a lifetime of love, our angel on earth, Harriet, has returned to her home. And we will carry out her spirit, her legacy, as long as we live.
That's for sure. Our other mother.
Yeah.
Tony, did you want to give some of the remarks from Michael? Yeah. We have someone who is going to join us via video, and they're not able to do that, but what we can do is we can make sure that that video gets out to folks if they're interested in. So you go ahead, Tony.
These words are from Michael Young, one of Harriet's fourth grade students at Shoesmith Elementary School. Michael must be about 69 or 70 or something like that. He's a few years older than Alicia and I, and he used to babysit for us, and we had lots of memories with him. But he's one of Harriet's students with whom that relationship from fourth grade went on through his entire life and through Harriet's entire life. So I'm going to read his remarks. I first saw Harriet Goff, or Mrs. Metters as she was known to us then, in early 1963 at a school assembly at Shoesmith Elementary School in Chicago. This was the year before I was in her class. Her group of fourth graders that year had made a large papier-mâché volcano in which they poured vinegar and baking soda to make the lava eruption. It didn't work, and there was consternation and disappointment. And Mrs. Metters came from the wings to troubleshoot. Somehow, the combination of her beauty and her kindness captivated me even then. After that, I saw her when she had recess duty, carrying a bell to summon the children back inside when recess was over. She always had 3 or 4 smitten students hanging on each of her arms, laughing, talking, reveling in the bliss of her presence. Now, I had the same teacher for first, second, and third grades in that school. I adored that teacher and dreaded leaving her for who knows what Gorgon might be teaching fourth grade. But my luck not only held out, it increased by several orders of magnitude. At the beginning of the next school year, my mother, who had become friendly with Harriet in graduate courses they had taken in the Committee on Human Development at the University of Chicago, took me into the classroom and said to Harriet, "If he talks too much, just tell him to shut up." Harriet later told me she was horrified at the suggestion. I either didn't hear or didn't notice, because Mrs. Metter's magic had already started and has never stopped and has never failed me. She was given to oracular pronouncements with great dramatic effect. Unkindness, or chewing gum, or Walt Disney desecrations of classic children's books was an abomination. And when one of us responded, "What's that?" she would look and say, "Look it up in your dictionary, man's best friend." All of a sudden she would say, "Michael, stop it." "But I wasn't doing anything." "Exactly. Stop that right now." She read to us Stuart Little and Charlotte's Web, writing on the board the last sentence because she was overcome with emotion. Using a different voice for each character. How did she keep them straight? When I asked her about it years later, she told me that as an only child with a somewhat draconian mother, she was always put to bed long before she was tired, so she amused herself by inventing a radio serial about a family, recited the dialogue, and gave each character a distinctive voice. And you could hear a pin drop while she was reading. No one stirred, even if the dismissal bell rang. When she realized that some of our classmates came to school very sleepy and hadn't had breakfast, she discreetly approached the lunchroom manager, Mrs. Lewis, and explained to her the problem. And Mrs. Lewis made sure those children got a proper meal on the spot. She also read to us James Thurber and required us to write creatively. Inspired by The Secret Life of Walter Mitty, I wrote an illustrated vignette called The Secret Life of Karen Carrot, spelled with K's, who founded a cottage cheese company called Carrot Cottage Cheese, K-H-E-E-S-E, each word beginning with the letter K and known as KKK. Years later, she presented me with a photocopy of this opus. She kept the original. She came to my wedding and the ceremony when I received my PhD. We visited art museums and went to plays and concerts together. But mostly, we talked a never-ending stream of shared impressions and musing and of anecdotes and memories of her extraordinary life, her travels, her seeing the Ballets Russes de Monte Carlo, and hearing Schnabel and also Rachmaninoff, whom she met in his dressing room at the Auditorium Theater with her piano teacher, Mr. Merriweather, getting the maestro's autograph in the bargain. I saw her several weeks before the end, and we talked and laughed and reminisced. She was mercifully spared the misery of cognitive decline. Her voice and her laugh and her luminous kindness and intellect are etched in my brain, where I can still hear them and feel them, and they will always warm my heart. That's from Michael Young.
Thank you for that, Tony. I'm just going to invite you to just take a little bit of a breath and taking in all that we've heard and all that we're holding in our hearts. Do we have time for a couple of memories? If folks have a memory of Harriet that you'd like to share briefly, I'm going to let you do that. I am going to say I was at Jesse Jackson's homegoing, and we're not going to go that long, but there's some good stories, y'all. Didn't Harriet just come alive?
You remember that Harriet said,
It should be okay.
okay, well, we were together in a trivia group at Fitz's Pub, and there were usually about 15 or so people in our group that showed up for each episode. One time, my husband and I wish he were here to join in this. He and I were there, and the only other two people who came were Harriet and Tony. And the four of us won.
Does anyone else have a brief memory or story? And take another breath with me, would you? Breathing in. Feel your body on the chair, your feet on the floor. One of the things I tell my congregation and talk about when we breathe, that when we breathe in, we're breathing in oxygen molecules that have been in the lungs of every breathing being that ever was. We breathe in and out. We're breathing in one another, near and far. And when we exhale, it makes us ancestors for those who will come. So, beloved, breathing in, we breathe in Harriet as an ancestor, as an inspiration, holding her close in our hearts, in our minds, and in our spirits. And we carry that wisdom and grace, humor, dignity. We would do well to carry it with ourselves. Reading that we have is that Harriett chose, right? Is by Marie Howe, What the Living Do. Johnny, the kitchen sink has been clogged for days. Some utensil probably fell down there. And Drano won't work, but smells dangerous, and crusty dishes have piled up, waiting for the plumber. I still haven't called. This is the day everyone we spoke of. It's winter again. The sky is a deep, headstrong blue, and the sunlight pours through the open living room windows because the heat's on too high in here and I can't turn it off. For weeks now, driving or dropping a bag of groceries in the street, the bag breaking, I've been thinking, this is what the living do. I've been thinking, this is what the living do. And yesterday, hurrying along those wobbly bricks in the Cambridge sidewalk, spilling my coffee down my wrist and sleeve. I thought it again, and again later when buying a hairbrush. This is it. Parking, slamming the car door shut in the cold, what you call that yearning, what you finally gave up. We want the spring to come and the winter to pass. We want whoever to call or not call, a letter, a kiss. We want more and then more of it. But there are moments walking when I catch a glimpse of myself in the window glass and say the window of the corner video store, and I'm gripped by a cherishing so deep for my own blowing hair, chapped face, and unbuttoned coat that I am speechless. I am living. I remember you. Invite us into a litany of remembrance, and your response is, we remember her. In the rising of the sun and in its going down, in the blowing of the wind and in the rains of winter, in the opening buds and in the rebirth of spring, in the blueness of the sky and in the warmth of summer, in the rustling leaves and in the beauty of autumn, in the beginning of the year and when it ends, when we are weary and in need of strength, when we are lost and sick at heart, when we have joys we yearn to share, when we read a magazine or a clipping and want to send it. Yes, beloved, we remember her. For as long as we live, Harriett shall live, for she is part of all who have known her. Jamie. Jamie, I remember how she used to look at you. I do. Friends, we extinguish this chalice in memory of Harriett Rogers Goff, whose physical body is no longer with us, but whose spirit and memory will be with us always. In mystery we're born, in mystery we live, in mystery we die. May the spirit of life and our companion in death be with you in your going forth. May you know peace beyond understanding, faith in the goodness of life, hope in the possibilities of life, and the love that is ever at work in life. Amen. And the family just wants to take the opportunity to thank you and express their appreciation and gratitude for the countless acts of kindness which helped and sustain and comfort them. There will be a reception downstairs, and I think gin, right? Is that right? Okay, and I'm gonna guess Guinness. Maybe some Guinness, I don't know. The family also wants you to know that if you're interested in making any memorial contribution, you can do that to the UCH Endowment Fund. And so, beloveds, as we leave from this place, take a look around and see the love and the life and the legacy of Harriett. And she stays with us always.